Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Lisa, and in this video we're going to have a look more closely at how I've completed this colour pencil illustration of Loki, including adding in the pan pastel background. In the description below I'll put a list of the paper, pencils and pan pastels I've used and the colours as well. Some of you may recognise Loki from social media like Instagram and Facebook. I've been following him for a couple of years now, and this photo really just stuck out to me and I really wanted to give it a go. I did ask for permission to use this photo and was allowed, so please make sure you're always using royalty-free photos, or if you are using other people's photos you need to be asking for permission. In the description below I'll put a list of a couple of the places where I do get my reference photos from, so you can have a look. Some are free and some you do need to pay for. If you like this video, remember to like and subscribe, and if you would like to see my pieces in progress, then add me on Insta, and if you want to see what I have for sale, you can then check me out on Etsy. Let's get started. Firstly, drawing the background. So firstly, what I've got here is my Fabriano paper with the really light graphite outline of the dog, and around the border you can see that I've put some tape down so that it'll get a nice crisp edge when I take the tape off. So I'll put a list of the pan pastel colours that I've used in the description below, but I am only very new to pan pastels, so I don't have a very big range of colours. So I really needed to get a really light blue for the corners and the top and everything. So what I did was use some of the titanium white and mixed it with some of the blue colours on just a printer paper. So that's what's happening on the left and the right, where it looks like white substances. It's not anything illegal, it is just the titanium white pan pastel. So some of the brushes that I've used, and the one that I'm using here is just this sort of triangle brush, and then later on I go through with the handle brush and the little sponge on the end. I'm not sure of the technical name of them. So like I said before, I just went and put a heap of the titanium white on some of the paper on the left and the right, and then started to mix in a couple of the blue colours until I was happy with the sort of light blue that I was getting for the sky. So my strategy here was just to go in really slowly and lightly, and I just wanted to point out as well that this paper is not the correct paper that you should be using for pan pastels. So this isn't pastel paper or anything like that. This is just Fabriano Artistico hot press watercolor paper, because I prefer to use this for my color pencil drawings. So if you're wanting to do sort of a full piece with pan pastels, I really don't recommend this paper. Although for this sort of thing, I'm just sort of experimenting and seeing how it goes, so you can be the judge of how you think it went. So firstly, I'm just using the sponge in small circular motions and just trying to get some of the pigment down into the paper. Like I said, I'm not really sure how they sort of go down and how quickly the colour will fill the tooth, so I am just going really slowly and sort of learning as I go. So for this, I'm sort of loosely following the reference photo and trying to get the sort of deep bottom section, and then going into sort of like a sunset with the pinky, purpley blue tones. So just using the sponge in small circular motions and really building up the colour very lightly. If you put on too much, you can just use like a kneaded eraser or a normal eraser and get rid of it. It does come up pretty quickly from this paper. One of the trickier parts was going around the outline, so you wanted to make sure that you're not sort of going so hard up against the outline that you have a really dark colour against the outline, and you want to try not to go into the outline too much, but you can sort of go over the pan pastel with your colour pencils, and that will make it look like the pan pastel is in the background and the animal is in the foreground, which is what we want. So the blue colours that I'm mixing with the titanium white is the Ultra Blue Extra Dark and the Failure Blue Extra Dark. And then when it comes to like the pinky purpley tones, I'm using the Magenta Extra Dark and also the Violet Extra Dark. So just really tiny bits of those pigment with quite a lot of the titanium white to make it look really faded out. And so then when I'd gone through with my sponge and put all of the colour down, it did look a little bit rough and grainy and a little bit patchy in areas. So this is where I used the handle sponge brush to start to smooth it all down. So make sure to start in the lighter areas and then move into the darker areas, because if you go into the darker areas first, it will transfer over to the lighter areas, which is not what we want. Also have a bit of paper towel or something else that you can wipe off the brush on when you're sort of going from darker to lighter, but when you're going from lighter to darker, it doesn't really make much of a difference. So what I've done for this one is, because I've put the pan pastel down and I don't want to smudge it away because it will just come up if I touch it, I've just put the mask here just to stop me from leaning on it, and then as I go around I'll just sort of peel it back and do the edges. But I'm going to start with the eye, so I'll use my kneaded eraser to just erase some of that. So let's get started. So before I went in with any colour, I got rid of some of the graphite just so it's not so dark, and then went in with my embossing tool and put in a couple of the little eyelashes that you can see there. And then just really lightly in with the dark sepia pencil to get the shape of the eye. And then once the shape is in there, I also went in with my soft white Holbein pencil to put down a wax resist in the highlight. So in this case it was the bottom right hand side of the eye and the top left hand side of the eye. And then I went in with a warm grey one base and the sky blue to put in the blue tones. And where I could see where it was sort of browner, I would put in some cinnamon, violet, burnt sienna. So although you can see a lot of brown in the eye, you don't want to go in too dark at the start, because you do want to mix the colours together and not just get a flat like burnt sienna colour that you can see in there. So that's why I put down some of the purple and warm grey one and the cinnamon pink colours, and then also the blue colours in the pupil, just to give it a little bit more dynamic, so it's not just a flat black colour for the pupil and around the eye. Then it's just a matter of going in with the dark sepia pencil where it sort of gets darker and starting to put in some of the shadows, and then just build up the tones really lightly. Using the Holbein soft white pencil to glaze down and knock back the colour a little bit, so then you can go back in and hype it up, but it makes it look really nice and shiny and glassy using the waxy pencil. And then into the highlights of the eye with the sky blue will make it look bluer and lighter in the highlight, and then going over again with the soft white Holbein, so just a lot of blending. Starting to add in some of the fur, the main colour I was using was the warm grey one as a base, so making sure to put it down in the direction that the fur is going, and I prefer to sort of work on clumps at a time so you're not getting lost. So I started off going around the eye and then up to the top left to do the face and the ear. Because I am right-handed, if I start on the right and then move over to the left, I will be constantly rubbing on the work, so you want to start from the left and move across to the right. Some of the colours that I used in the white fur was the warm grey 1, warm grey 3, and then started to work in some of the purple, sky blue, and then also some of the dark indigo and dark sepia, putting in a couple of little light lines of that to give it shadow. Making sure also to go in the direction that the fur is going and also against the fur direction. So if you're doing fur strokes against the fur direction, this looks like shadows underneath the white fur. And that's what we want to do for the white fur going into the brown and fawn colour fur. So when moving on to the ear, I find it's easier just to sort of focus on little sections of it. So if I went over and just put a warm grey 1 colour over the whole ear, you sort of get a little bit lost and can't see where all of the shadows and different sections of the ear are. So I do recommend just going over, sort of doing one half and then slowly working in and putting it all together in the end. I did go in and use an embossing tool at the base of the ear and also in the middle to make it look like there were little white furs going off to the side, and I also did use a slice tool going into the darkness of the ear to make it look like white hairs are lapping over the black or dark brown sections. Moving on to the nose and the ridge of the nose, I was quite nervous about this area just because it's right up against the pan pastel and I wanted to make it look like it's not sort of joined and that the dog is in the foreground, so it was a bit nerve-wracking to do this one. If you want to see in real time how I've completed a nose, you can check out my Staffy tutorial or Waldo, which is a Labrador tutorial as well. That gives a full half an hour, 40-minute real-time tutorial of how I've completed the nose. But firstly, I do go in and put in the outline with the dark sepia like I do for the eye, go in and put in some highlights with the Holbein Soft White, and then start to build in the mid-tones of the blue, purple, pink colours, and then go over with the dark sepia, dark indigo, walnut brown, burnt sienna, and put in all of the brown and darker tones around there. So when it comes to white fur, the first thing I do is go in with a warm grey 1, do a base layer, and then go in a little bit harder in the darker areas with the warm grey 1 and just start to map in all of the shapes and darker sections I can see, and then start to work in some of the sky blue in the bluer areas, and then some of the warm grey 3 to build up some of the darker sections you can see in the white fur. So once you get sort of a base layer down and you've mapped it in a little bit, then I do recommend that you sort of move on to the darker fur and start to put that in, so then you can judge how dark the white fur needs to be against the dark fur. So if you just go in really, really dark with the white fur, then you're going to have to make the brown and grey fur look really, really dark to make the white look white, if that makes sense. So with the fur on the back of the neck and all down the body, I go in first with the warm grey 1, put in a base layer and sort of do clumps at a time, as I mentioned before. And then having a look at the reference photo, you need to look and see the colours underneath the dark fur. So on the back of the neck and down the body, it's quite pink and blue, so I've used some of the beige red in the pinker sections and the sky blue in the blue sections. And then it's just a matter of going in with your darker colours in your fur strokes and putting in the fur over that base layer. So I've gone in with the dark sepia, a bit of walnut brown and dark indigo to put in the fur lines over the base layers that you can see. This sort of texture does take a really long time to build up and it can be quite frustrating, so it's just a matter of picking small sections, putting them in, and then evaluating and stepping back and seeing what you need to fix up and where you can go darker in certain areas. Also, where there is white fur down the body, where it sort of looks blurry, I have used the white Holbein pencil, and that really helps to make the fur lines look blurry and blend all of the colours together and make it look sort of pastel colour. So when I had finished, I then left it for a couple of days, came back and evaluated it against the reference photo and added in some more details where I thought it needed it. And this is the final result. I really hope that you like this video. Remember to give it a like and subscribe. Add me on Insta and keep drawing, guys.